Hello everyone, welcome to back my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before starting the video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. They said she came into the world a whisper, a fragile, small miracle whose very existence felt like a prayer answered and then held carefully between trembling hands. Josie's first breath, even in this imagined telling, arrived wrapped in the hush of machines and the steady, determined voices of people who refused to call anything hopeless. She was a child born into a family where faith was woven into everyday language, where joy and trial braided together to form the backdrop to ordinary life. That faith would be both balm and burden in the days that followed, because grief never respects dogma. It arrives in a language all its own. This, then, is not merely a story of loss. It is a portrait of a family whose center of gravity shifts when the unthinkable happens. It is about the way a small life can hold so much weight in the hearts around it, the way a few pounds of flesh and a handful of fingers can redefine meaning, reorder priorities, and force adults to feel things they had no name for before. The morning the news is imagined to come, the world outside the Duggar home feels ordinary. Birds argue over a feeder, a neighbor's mailbox glints in the sun, and somewhere a lawnmower drones on. Inside, the house breathes differently. Light hits familiar places, the cross in the hallway, the quiet chairs in the living room, but something in the rhythm of conversation has been clipped. When the family gathers, faces that are usually so composed are raw at the edges. Their eyes keep returning, as if with every blink, to memory and to the question, how do you carry the weight of a child who was never meant to leave? Grief is a series of small betrayals. The first is how quickly routine becomes impossible. The plate that remains empty at the table is a desert, not for the body but for habit. One small hand that no longer reaches for a cookie leaves an ache in the ritual of supper. Photographs on the mantel become more than images. They are arguments for existence, proof that the child once occupied a place in history and in hearts. Each photo, each toy, each pacifier is a knot that tightens when touched. The family moves through their days with strange, soft-footed reverence. They replay memories until the edges blur and stitch into a new fabric of recollection. Someone remembers the way Josie's eyelids fluttered when she dreamt. Another recalls the surprising sound she made, a small triumphant chirp that felt like victory over every tiny medical obstacle she had faced. These are not grand narratives but fragments, a smell of baby lotion, the tilt of an ear, the warmth of a cheek against a father's shoulder. The details that once seemed ordinary are collected like precious coins. In this imagined goodbye, parents sit on the edge of the bed and hold a child who feels impossibly small and impossibly heavy at once. Words fail. They always do when the heart is trying on the impossible. Prayers spill out, not neat and tidy but raw and questioning, because holy books do not provide maps for this landscape. The prayers are both supplication and conversation, a stream of pleadings and gratitude and rage that runs together until it is impossible to separate one from another. Those who come to offer comfort find that platitudes fall flat. "She's with the Lord" is a sentence intended to soothe, but tenderness and anger both live in the same chest, and the words sometimes sting like salt when the wound is new. People speak in memories rather than advice. She once stared so intently at the mobile, she adored the sunshine on her face. Her grip, so strong for such tiny fingers. These memories are offerings, small lamps to illuminate the avenue of mourning. The public world, social media, news outlets, the steady hum of interest amplifies grief in ways the family never intended. Pictures are reposted, reactions are collected like badges. Condolences arrive by the hundreds, some warm and steady, others clumsy with the intrusiveness of strangers. For the family, the noise is both balm and tempest. Gratitude mixes with a desire to retreat into privacy. Obligation to respond competes with the need to simply grieve in silence. The cameras, once a willing witness to joy and milestones, are now mirrors that show the family's vulnerability in high definition. But grief also produces rituals that become lifelines. There's a funeral planned with the same care and devotion the family gives to every celebration. The hymn list is debated over cups of tea, relatives practice readings, and everyone agrees on soft colors and a playlist that lingers on lullabies and hymns about homecoming. The funeral, when it happens in this imagined world, becomes an event that both breaks the family open and holds them together. People from near and far come bearing casseroles and flowers and, more importantly, presents. At the service, the church is full in a way that is both honoring and surreal. Voices lift, sometimes in perfect harmony, sometimes reined in by fresh sobs. The eulogies are intimate and stumbling and fierce. A mother speaks of the night she sat awake and whispered into a small ear, promising everything she could not yet give. A father's words are sparse but molten with love. A sibling remembers the way Josie would turn her head at the sound of a certain song and how that tiny motion felt like a compass point for all of them. What follows the funeral is not an end but a new mode of existing. The household settles into a pattern of remembrance that is different from the life before. Names are spoken with tenderness and sometimes with a catch, as if the throat will refuse to form them. There are times when silence sits in the rooms like a physical thing. Other moments, laughter returns, thin and brittle at first, then genuine because life stubbornly insists on continuing. People find themselves laughing and then shocked that they laughed. They still feel the presence of the child in small domestic coincidences. Grief works its way into the mundane. There is grief in the way laundry is done and in the grocery lists that still include items for a child who will not be there to eat them. There is grief in the way parents notice the minuscule details of other children, the way they hug too tightly, the way they watch playgrounds with a mixture of longing and gratitude. Friends reach out with casseroles and offers to help. Some are surprised that grief endures beyond the rituals of condolence. The family, in time, allows cheeks to become dry and eyes to clear, but grief has changed them. It has carved new canyons in the landscape of their hearts. In this creative imagining, the family finds ways to channel their grief into something enduring. They create an online fund in Josie's name, aimed at supporting babies born prematurely and families navigating similar medical uncertainty. The campaign is modest at first, then gathers momentum. It is not about fame or attention, it is an attempt to turn pain into purpose. Messages from parents who have faced their own nights of hospital corridors begin to arrive. Thank you for honoring her. Your story helped me through. These notes are small salves, reminders that from sorrow can blossom solidarity. There are also moments of anger and doubt, because faith is rarely a neat refuge from pain. When theology collides with raw human experience, questions arise that feel dangerous and taboo. Why would a loving God allow this? Where was God in that hospital room at 3 a.m? The family does not pretend to have tidy answers. Some lean harder into prayer. Others find themselves wrestling with scripture in new, urgent ways. This struggle does not diminish belief. Instead, it deepens it, compels it into new forms. People speak of trusting God but also of needing space to grieve honestly, to be angry without feeling like they have betrayed their faith. Siblings process differently. Older brothers and sisters take on practical roles, arranging flowers, coordinating the logistics of memorials, speaking to reporters with the stoic steadiness that public life has taught them. Younger siblings grieve in fits and starts. Sometimes their sorrow looks like play that refuses to stay comfortably cheerful. One sister, who was younger than Josie in this telling, keeps a little notebook full of drawings of angels. Another brother builds a small wooden box in which he places some of Josie's things, a soft blanket, a mitten, a tiny sock. These acts are ritualistic, tactile, and healing in their own way. Friends become anchors. Old neighbors bring casseroles for weeks, not as gestures of obligation but as reminders of community. One woman, herself a mother who once lost a child, knocks and does not speak about grief. Instead, she sits in the kitchen and peels apples and hums. Presence, in these days, is its own language of love. The family also navigates the practical. paperwork, hospital bills, the endless small transactions that life demands. There is the funeral home, the obituary composed with care, the legalities that must be handled even while the heart is splintering. These are the ways grief insists on business, on the world's need for formality even when the private interior is unworkable. The family learns to put one foot in front of the other to navigate a map no one taught them. Time, the great healer of clichés, does its work in small increments. It does not fix the wound, because there is nothing to be fixed. Instead, it changes the perimeter of daily living. Anniversary dates and birthdays become markers not of absence alone, but also of the richness that once was. On the day that would have been Josie's second birthday in this imagined timeline, the family gathers not to dramatize grief, but to celebrate, to plant a tree, to release a few helium balloons, to share stories that elicit smiles between tears. They mark the day with food and music and the gentle laughter of relatives who remember the small victories. The first time Josie grasped a finger, the way she quickly learned to track a face. The narrative of loss also focuses attention on love's enormous capacity, the ways a tiny life can rearrange priorities, reorder relationships, and illuminate what truly matters. There are quiet transformations. A parent who once chased work emails into late nights now refuses to miss bedtime rituals with other children. Siblings who once squabbled find themselves tender in new ways, protective of the family's remaining innocence. The house may experience a new kind of stillness, but it is not a dead one. It is a sanctuary of memory. Alongside internal shifts, the family begins small projects of remembrance. They create a scholarship in Josie's name for young mothers. They commission a bench in a local park with an engraved plaque that reads, "In memory of Josie, a small light, forever bright." The bench becomes a place where parents come to sit with their thoughts, where children trace the letters with curious fingers. These acts of legacy are not grandiose. They are humble attempts at meaning-making, ways to ensure that a brief life leaves behind a ripple. Not all responses to grief are tidy or heroic. There are moments of raw exhaustion, of anger aimed at doctors and at God, of withdrawals and small, private implosions. Those closest to the heart learn to tolerate each other's way of grieving. Some need to talk, others need silence. Some throw themselves into action, others withdraw into solitude. The family builds a porous shelter of patience, allowing members to come and go through their own grief cycles without judgment. There are also narrative battles with the public telescope. Rumors and speculation find their way into comment sections and tabloids, and the family learns to set boundaries. Public statements are issued with a tone of gratitude but also firm privacy. They will honor their child and accept the community's condolences, but they will not allow speculation to dominate their mourning. Journalists sometimes ask for interviews. The family politely declines. Grief, they learn, is a private geography with fragile borders. In time, the rawness eases enough to allow for meaning to be made. The family chooses to write a book, not to capitalize on tragedy, but to offer a map to others navigating similar dark waters. It is a collection of essays and prayerful reflections, honest in its reporting of pain and candid about faith. Portions of the proceeds are donated to neonatal research and support networks for families of critically ill infants. Through storytelling, the family learns the redemptive power of testimony, that telling the truth about suffering can be a gift to others. The book does not answer the question many will continue to ask, why? But it offers company for the long nights. Letters start to arrive from parents who have experienced the same bitter medicine, couplets of grief that sound strangely like hope. "We lost a child when ours was small." One letter reads, "We thought we would drown. We didn't. We learned to breathe with new lungs." Those who write speak of the way communities form across hospital beds, how shared stories become lifelines. As years pass in this crafted remembrance, the family's life is not defined by a single, shattering moment. The loss remains, sharp as a star in the night sky, impossible to dim, but it coexists with ordinary joys. graduations, small weddings, the laughter of grandchildren who will never know Josie but who have been shaped by the ways those who loved her learned to live. Each birthday that passes is a dual threshold, a reminder of what was and a celebration of the continuity of life. Grief, the essay suggests in its quiet moral, is not a disease to be cured but a new shape of being. It can harden into vengeful bitterness or soften into compassion. For this family, the choice is to allow sorrow to transform them into people who hold others more gently. They sit longer with friends who are hurting. They visit hospital wards with baskets of blankets. They listen without offering platitudes. In the end, the narrative's truest line is not the ending. Grief, after all, does not end, but the transformation of meaning. Josie's life, brief and luminous, becomes a lens through which the family re-sees the world. Ordinary acts acquire sacramental weight. Bedtime stories are prayers, meals are rituals of thanksgiving, a held hand is proof of presence. The pain of goodbye, imagined as it is, never truly leaves. It simply becomes part of the fabric of daily devotion. Perhaps the most tender scene in this fictional account occurs on a late autumn evening when the family gathers at the bench in the park. The leaves have tumbled like confetti. A chill is in the air. A small granddaughter, unrelated to the real person this story imagines, toddles forward and runs her fingers over the engraved letters. An uncle kneels and fixes her mitten. He speaks softly of little things, of the way a child's laughter fills a room. There is no attempt to erase sorrow, only to allow it to take its place alongside gratitude. The park bench is a small altar in the public square, a place where grief and memory meet. The imagined story closes not with a tidy moral but with a series of small truths. That love leaves marks that are indelible. That faith can hold both questions and praise. That when a life is cut short, the dignity of goodbye is found not in the length of days but in the depth of love. Josie, in this creative rendering, lives on in the lessons her family has learned: to be present, to love fiercely, to hold each other close. Her absence is a presence of its own, a quiet force that shapes the family's trajectory. To grieve publicly is to become a teacher by accident, to show others that sorrow is possible and survivable. In the years that follow, the family becomes a touchstone for others, not because they are special, but because their vulnerability is honest. People come to them seeking counsel, not to be told that grief is a thing that weak people endure, but to be told that grief is a language of the heart, to be spoken, to be wept, to be held. There is a final line in this imaginative piece, a small benediction that the family offers to others. Live like there is no tomorrow, but grieve like you have forever. It is not paradoxical but comprehensive. Live fully, because life is fragile. Grieve without hurry, because the work of sorrow is necessary. In this way, Josie's brief life becomes a template for living well, attentively, lovingly, and fiercely present. Her goodbye, in this constructed narrative, is indeed painful, but it is also holy, a testament to the human capacity to turn grief into compassion and solitude into shared memory. And when the night comes and the house quiets, the family rests with small, steady rituals of remembrance. A nightlight glows where a nursery once hummed. An old lullaby plays on a loop in an otherwise silent room. There is pain, yes, and there will always be. But there is also a relentless, tender courage. They carry her memory like a lamp, and by its light they keep walking, step by step, into ordinary mornings that, after that loss, are never ordinary again.